Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Good evening and welcome, dear ones. We are, of course, studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. We're just about to finish with Jnana Yoga. There's a concluding section that we'll take up after we finish this talk, which is titled The Real and the Apparent Man. Before we begin, are there any questions or comments or concerns? Anything you'd like to add from your own wisdom or experience left over from where we were when we stopped talking about this last time? Any concerns at all about what the Swami's talking about when he says the real and the apparent?
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
I would love to read a quote and then get your thoughts on it relating to Jnana Yoga.
Please.
Okay, it's by Alan Watts, and he says, I think the Bible ought to be ceremoniously and reverently burnt every Easter. We need it no more because the Spirit is with us. It's a dangerous book, and to worship it, of course, a far more dangerous idolatry than to bow down to images of wood and stone, because nobody in his senses can confuse a wooden image with God. But you can very easily confuse a set of ideas with God, because concepts are more rarefied and abstract. So my follow-up question is, do you think we should burn Jnana Yoga similarly?
You know, Alan Watts loved to be provocative. He and John Lennon were of birds of a feather. I don't think we should burn the Bible, and I don't think we should burn Jnana Yoga. I don't think the Bible is a dangerous book, nor do I think that Jnana Yoga is dangerous. I understand what Alan Watts was pointing to, and, you know, the extreme of Advaita, or in the Buddhist tradition, Zen, is the perspective essentially from which he was speaking. And Sri Ramakrishna said that if consciousness is primary and is not plural, then God is indeed in the image. And God is indeed in the book and is indeed in the words, which is what he termed Vijnana, the knowledge beyond the insistence, which is what nididhyasana is, insistence on truth, insistence on the void. So So Alan Watts, as I said, loved to be provocative, and he loved to start a discussion with some of these provocative ideas. So, having said all that, Roberto, how do you respond to that?
I've heard from even swamis before that they say that they never read books because they like to come up with ideas from themselves because God is within them. They don't need the words of others. So I thought it kind of relevant. Although I really enjoyed this book, Jnana Yoga, I wouldn't burn it myself either. But
Well,
I just thought it was interesting the idea of either
those swamis,
getting to know it yourself or to get it through knowledge, through books.
those swamis no longer need books, and that's true. They don't. They have assimilated all of the ideas, all of the practices that they need. So they no longer need books. Swami Vivekananda was one of those. After a certain point, he no longer read any books. And in some letters late in his life, he lamented that he'd read so many when he was young because they just cluttered up his collection of samskaras. And Vivekananda said to one of his foremost disciples, a Swami named Sadananda, Sadananda was fond of quoting from the Bible and from Adi Shankaracharya, and fond of comparing and contrasting the two points of view and so on and so forth. And at one point, Vivekananda said to him, "Well, Sadananda, all that's well and good, but what do you know?" And so I certainly grasp what you were saying, Roberto. At a certain point, we do not read books. And we will know when that is no longer necessary. When the mind becomes its own guru, and we're no longer in need of assimilating anything new, and we take the attitude that St. Thomas Aquinas did after he had his final realization, whatever that was. It sounds an awful lot like he had nirvikalpa samadhi, what we would call nirvikalpa samadhi. And he said of everything he had written before that it was as straw, fit to line the stables where the holy droppings would fall. And he said, I can write no more. I can no longer write anything. He had written, I believe the number is 100 books in 13 years. So book learning is useful up to the point where the knowledge begins to come from within. We have accessed deeply enough to where we're receiving the knowledge that might result in books. But we notice that Nisargadatta Maharaj, Ramana Maharshi, people of that kind, Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, the first three, Nisargadatta, Ramana Maharshi, Sri Ramakrishna, they wrote no books at all. Vivekananda wrote one book, and that one reluctantly, but at the insistence of his English and American disciples, he wrote the book Raja Yoga. So thanks for bringing that up, Roberto. That is very apropos. And at a certain point, I think each of us who continues to pursue this path with diligence and sincerity we'll get to the point where no book is any longer necessary. Anything else from anyone before we go on?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Swam.
um, I think there might be a difference between book reading and active reading and learning. If we are just reading it like a ordinary book, probably we are not going to get the essence. But if we actively read and contemplate at the same time, then it's not mere reading. I mean, we can get our own ideas from active reading.
I agree entirely. If we're doing the manana along with the shravana, in other words, hearing or reading, and if we're comparing the ideas that we're reading in this case, in your example, if we're comparing those ideas with the way we currently think and therefore speak and act, and identifying those things that will result in changes in our behavior, then we are reading in a way that is auspicious. As you say, if you just simply read something for an intellectual exercise, well, it may be entertaining, but it's virtually useless in terms of your spiritual growth. Ultimately, the source of all books is accessed within us. And that's what I think Roberto was pointing to. And of course, what Alan Watts may have gone on to develop as an idea in that talk that started, or at least that contained the very provocative statement that Roberto read to us. Anything else from anyone? Good way to start the class. What is it we're doing here? Why are we reading this? Why are we studying this? Well, because from here anyway, the answer to that is because Swamiji's level of ignorance was far less than our own. It might have been zero. Having been in the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, he may have had zero ignorance. So certainly he is qualified to help us remove our ignorance by suggesting to us ways of seeing what appears to us as our reality, seeing it differently. And that certainly is what we're going to read tonight. Anything else from anyone? All right. We have seen that it is the universal cosmic mind that splits itself into the akasha and prana. We have seen that it is the universal cosmic mind that splits itself into the akasha and prana. Om, Oing, Hrim. That is the Sanskrit expression of that. Those are three bijas. They're not words. So they're not really Sanskrit, but that is Om is the cosmic mind, and Oing, Hrim are Akasha and Prana. We have seen that it is the universal cosmic mind that splits itself into the Akasha and Prana. And beyond mind, we have found the soul in us. In the universe, behind the universal mind, there is a soul, capital S, that exists, and it is called God. In the individual, it is the soul of man. In this universe, in the cosmos, just as the universal mind becomes evolved into Akasha and Prana, even so we may find that the universal soul itself becomes evolved as mind. Is it really so with the individual man? Is his mind the creator of his body and his soul the creator of his mind? That is to say, are his body, his mind, and his soul three different existences, or are they there in one or or are they there in one, or again, are they different states of existence of the same unit being? So let me read that again. That is to say, are his body, his mind, and his soul three different existences, or are they there in one, or again, are they different states of existence of the same unit being? We shall gradually try to find an answer to this question. The first step is that we have now gained, the first step that we have now gained is this. There is this external body behind this, behind this external body, there are the organs, the mind, the intellect, and behind this is the soul. That's the syllogism that he developed in that we studied week before last. At the first step, we have found, as it were, that the soul is separate from the body, separate from the mind itself. Opinions in the religious world become divided at this point, and the departure is this. All these religious views, which generally pass under the name of dualism, hold that this soul is qualified, that it is of various qualities. Yes, that it is of various qualities, that all feelings of enjoyment, pleasure, and pain really belong to the soul. The non-dualists deny that the soul has any such qualities. They say it is unqualified. Let me first take up the dualists and try to present to you their position with regard to the soul and its destiny. Next, the system that contradicts them. And lastly, let us try to find the harmony which non-dualism will bring to us. This harmony that he's going to develop is this special knowledge that Sri Ramakrishna spoke of as Vijnana. Beyond Jnana, beyond non-dualism, there is Vijnana, beyond the elementary non-dualism. The soul of man, because it is separate from the mind and body, because it is not composed of akasha and prana, must be immortal. I'm going to read that again. The soul of man, because it is separate from the mind and body, because it is not composed of akasha and prana, must be immortal. Why? What do we mean by mortality? Decomposition. And that is only possible for things that are the result of composition. Anything that is made of 2 or 3 ingredients that must become decomposed. Anything that is made of 2 or 3 ingredients or more must become decomposed. That alone, which is not the result of composition, can never become decomposed and therefore can never die. It is immortal. It has been existing throughout eternity and it is uncreate. Every item of creation is simply a composition. No one ever saw creation come out of nothing. All that we know of creation is the combination. All that we know of creation is the combination of already existing things into newer forms. This is anti-entropy. This is one of the forces that exist in nature. Anti-entropy, this things decomposing and becoming something new and more complex, more specialized. The astrophysicists have got this one nailed cold. That being so, this soul of man being simple, that is not made of more than one ingredient, must have been existing forever and will exist forever. When the body falls off, the soul lives on. Now, let's pause there because this is a very pregnant idea. It is the source of the idea that you are that, tattvamasi, and that is eternal, unchanging, infinite, and so by definition will never die. Is there any comment from your own experience or ideas, or any concern or question that comes up as a result of the Swami saying these things?
Brother Shankara, can you hear me? I'm under the name of Bulbul Dutt. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course we can, Krishna Kali.
Yes, I think I'll see if I can open the video. Okay, I can't. So my question was that Prakriti and Purusha, Sankhya considers to be separate, right? And Advaita Vedanta.
This is yes, that's correct.
And Advaita Vedanta considers it to be the same.
Well, the same in two states.
Yes, so the Chit Granthi that we hear about, the Chit Granthi where the Prakriti and the Purusha come together. Can you explain how that happens, how the soul gets enmeshed with the Prakriti and the Purusha and the Prakriti, how like Brahmananda said, it's a continuum, right? The Prakriti and the Purusha are a continuum of each other and a finer and finer, right? As they go into being a soul.
Yes.
So how does that happen?
There's two ready answers. One given by Swami Sarvapriyananda. When asked this question, why does the divine why does the cosmic mind do this? He said the answer is very American, because it can. He said in another context, and I've heard this from other swamis, and it's an opinion shared here, you've heard it voiced here, we do this because we like it. We entangle ourselves because we like it, which resulted in that little matanka, being, creating, doing, sharing, being, creating, doing, sharing. The joys of these is why we're here. When you're truly tired of this, just sign off and head for home. We do this because we like it. We want to be entangled. And this is why Swami Vivekananda, in other contexts, tells us never complain about your suffering. There's no adventure without the suffering. There's no way to be without this, which you referred to as entanglement. Does that answer your question, Krishna Kali?
Brother Shankara, the Atma Ananda Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha is just a reflection of the soul, right? Of Satchitananda. At which point does it connect? I'm just wondering, like we have the 5 koshas. At which point is the soul connected, the causal body connecting to the, I mean,
It does not. It does not connect.
right.
It reflects.
Yeah, I heard that it is reflecting, it's not connected.
All of the koshas
Uh-huh.
are a form of reflection of the energy that is emanating the uh, from the soul or Atman or the divine presence that is at the center of our being. So there's no connection.
So the reflection is who we are. So at
No,
what
no,
point
no,
are we
no, no,
connected?
no, no, no. The reflection is who we are not. That which is reflected is what we are. The reflection is what we experience.
I think it's a very subtle point that I
Oh
am
yes.
not getting it. Yeah.
Well, dear heart,
I said it's a
if you
very
if you,
subtle.
if you look in a mirror, is that you in the mirror?
That's my Annamaya Kosha.
That's your reflection. That is, and you can see that, but you cannot see yourself.
I see.
You can only experience yourself, capital S, by divorcing yourself from the experience. This is renunciation, divorcing yourself from the experience of the 5 organs of perception and the 5 organs of action. And when you do that, the mind goes silent because there's no longer any stimulation, and there's no longer any vritti, no whirlpool in the chitta, the mind stuff, no vibration in the mind stuff. And so then that which was being reflected becomes known to you. But because there's no knower there in the sense that we ordinarily think of knower, it is a very different kind of knowing. And try as he would, and he did, Sri Ramakrishna could not. And as articulate and as highly focused as he was, he could not really share the experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi with his disciples in words. So when they yearned enough, he would share that with them by putting him in that state of being. And even those are clumsy words because it's not really a state of being at all, at least as defined. So thanks for bringing that up, Krishna Kali. That is the point. There is no connection. Now, the Swami will get to this, Vivekananda. There is no connection between that which is reflected and the reflection.
So that's why they call it an illusion.
An illusion, yes. It's illusory. All that God alone is real, all else is illusory. This is the pronouncement of Sri Ramakrishna, Ramana Maharshi, and they use different words, but it's exactly the same idea. When Ramana Maharshi was asked by someone who came to him with a group of people And the person that was interacting with Ramana was speaking to him, as a spokesperson for the group. He said, "Well, Master, if I achieve this state of being," or words to that effect, and become what you have said I would become." And then he gestured to the group that he'd come with, which was sitting behind him. He said, "What about the others?" And Ramana said simply, "There are no others." Now, you can think of that as a koan, or you can simply accept it as a way of saying God alone is real. The fact that there seem to be others is illusory.
Just like in a dream, is it?
That is one way of saying it, yes. Sri Ramakrishna preferred the idea that it is not a dream, it is simply a reality in a different form. Water still, water in waves. This is where, but he wouldn't have disagreed with Ramana in saying there are no others. He would have just said that the appearance of others is just water in waves, not that it was dreamlike. It was just a different expression of the same underlying reality.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Brother Shankar, I have a follow-up question.
Yes, Swayam.
So there is no connection between the reflection and that which is reflected, correct?
That's the understanding from here, yes.
Right. So it is just ignorance that we get attached to the reflection. So we cannot connect to the reflected. We can only detach from the reflection. Does that make sense?
Yes, and when we fully detach from the reflection, then what is being reflected is fully revealed. Now, when that happens, we may not choose to come back to the reflection. But if we do, if we are one of those, and Sri Ramakrishna says, it's not a choice that you make. It is a choice of the divine itself, that which is beyond mind and speech. If you do return to the realm of reflection, you return in this state of vijnana, and the reason you've returned is to teach. And so the great teachers are all of this stripe. They have been completely unreflected, so to speak. This is why Christ could say, I and my Father are one. That of which I am a reflection. I am one with that. And the reflection, they went on to say, becomes the vine. He is the vine. And all of those who follow his teachings are the branches. They too are non-separate from the vine. But this persistent feeling of separation, we cannot deny its truth. As Sri Ramakrishna says, as long as a sense of I consciousness remains in us, that this that we are experiencing is 100% real. But in the lowercase r sense. Does that come close to answering what you were driving at?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
This is exactly what we should be doing, folks. This is wonderful. Let's explore these ideas until we're satisfied that we have some grip on what it is that the Swami is talking about here. That the soul being simple, it's not a thing of composition. And so it cannot be connected to those things that are of composition. If it were, it too would be something of composition. Shall we read on? Everybody satisfied? They're good from here?
The Swami Vivekananda repeatedly mentions akasha and prana. I've heard those terms before. Does prana mean like life force, life energy?
Yes, it's what Einstein was pointing to in his equivalence of E equals mc squared. Akasha equals prana. Energy, prana, is the same as matter. That's why the equal sign. Matter the energy in a different form is matter.
So akasha is matter, prana is energy.
Yes, that's a rough way of saying it. Yes,
that's a start. And Om, Oim, Hreem, you mentioned that. How does that relate to akasha and prana?
Those are the primal sound, the unstruck sound, the sound of the cosmic mind thinking this thought of manyness is Om. As it does this, the sounds of akasha, the sound of akasha is Oim. The sound of prana is Hreem. This is this is Ishvara and Ishwari, the divine masculine, the divine feminine. This is Purusha and Prakriti. These are all different terms used by different people in different eras, trying to express their insights into what they had experienced. So they came up with their own expression of it. Sankhya is an expression developed by Kapila. Kapila was a great sage of, I don't remember how many thousand years ago, perhaps 4,000, perhaps even more. But in any event, Sri Krishna says in the Gita, I was Kapila. This looks to be, from the great development of Indian thought, this looks to be the first attempt to systematically express the nature of reality to be understood by the left mind. The left mind was emerging more and more. This is a truth that can be, you can read this in the writings of ethnoanthropologists. There was a time when the left mind was not nearly so prominent as it is in this era, the Kali Yuga. And so it looks to be the first attempt in the Indian system of thinking to express reality, the nature of reality, in this systematic, scientific way. If you look deeply into Sankhya, you'll find it is extremely, it will remind you of modern science in its very careful and thoughtful definition. It means, Sankhya means enumeration or counting. So it's trying to explain what actually happened that resulted in what we experience in a way that the left mind can grasp it. The Upanishadic thoughts are not, if you read the Svatasvatara Upanishad, it is a series of ecstatic utterances from a right brain frame of reference. If you read the Katha Upanishad, it seems linear on the surface, but once you dig underneath the surface, particularly if you hear it expounded by someone like Swami Vivekananda, you see it is not linear at all. It seems to tell a story, but that's the way a parable seems to tell a story. The parable of the prodigal child seems to tell a story. Beneath that is a tremendous amount of information that is not linear in its development and in its import. The nature of the child, the nature of the father, the nature of the relationship, the nature of our immortality and of our inability to sin be an error in such a way that disqualifies us from being who we truly are, which is beyond all external activity. Does that make sense, Brahmadas?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Hallelujah, folks. This is exactly it. This is studying the art of spirituality together. Okay. The soul of man, being simple, must have been existing forever, and it will exist forever. When this body falls off, the soul lives on. According to the Vedantists, when this body dissolves, the vital forces of the man, the prana, according to the Vedantists, when this body dissolves, the vital forces of the man go back to his mind, and the mind becomes dissolved, as it were, into the prana, and that prana enters into the soul of a man, and the soul of a man comes out, clothed, as it were, with what they call the fine body, the mental body, or spiritual body, as you may like to call it. So this is an important next development of thought. According to the Vedantists, which is Swami now contrasting this with the dualists, according to the Vedantists, when this body dissolves, the vital forces of that man go back to his mind, and the mind becomes dissolved, as it were, into the prana. And that prana enters into the soul of a man, and the soul of a man comes out clothed, as it were, with what they call the fine body, the mental body, or spiritual body, as you may like to call it. In this body are the samskaras. I'm sorry, there's an A missing. In this body are the samskaras of the man. That is, the mental impressions that have been left from the prior embodiments, the prior, okay. In this body are the samskaras of the man. What are the samskaras? The mind is like a lake, and every thought is like a wave upon that lake. Just as in the lake, waves rise and then fall down and disappear, so these thought waves are continually rising in his mind in the mind stuff, and then disappearing. But they do not disappear forever. They become finer and finer, but they are all there, ready to start up at another time when called upon to do so. Memory is simply a calling back into waveform some of those thoughts which have gone into that finer state of existence. Now let's get that very clear. You exist because of your memory. You exist because you remember how to exist. You know name and form. So these thought waves are continually rising in the mind stuff and then disappearing, but they do not disappear forever. They become finer and finer, but they are all there, ready to start up at another time when called upon to do so. Memory is simply calling back into wave form some of those thought waves which have gone into that finer state of existence. Thus, everything that we have thought, every action that we have done is lodged in the mind. It is all there in fine form. And when a man dies, the sum total of those impressions is in the mind, which again works upon which works upon a little fine material as a medium. The soul, clothed as it were, clothed, not interpenetrated with, clothed as it were with these impressions. And the fine body passes out, and the destiny of the soul is guided by the result of all the different forces represented by the different impressions. According to us, there are 3 different goals for the soul. According to us, there are 3 different goals for the soul. Those that are very spiritual, when they die, follow the solar rays and reach what is called the solar sphere, through which they reach what is called the lunar sphere, and through that they reach what is called the sphere of lightning. And there they meet with another soul who is already blessed and are guided, and he guides the newcomer There they meet another soul who is already blessed, and he guides the newcomer toward the highest of all spheres, which is called Brahmaloka, the sphere of Brahman, Brahm. There, these souls attain to omniscience and omnipotence, become almost as powerful and as all-knowing as God himself, and they reside there forever, according to the dualists, or according to the non-dualists, they become one with the universal at the end of the cycle. So that was quite a mouthful. Any thoughts or comments or questions about what this Swami is saying?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
can you expand upon what is the meaning of the sum total of these impressions? Is it like every single impression is totaled up, or it's
Yes,
categorized?
yes. Categorized, no. Not categorized. That's a left brain function. As Swami Prabhavananda pointed out, this categorization is like trying to empty the ocean of consciousness with a teaspoon. The reason being, if you remember way back in the early talks that are part of this Jnana Yoga, the Swami talked about evolution. The fact that each one of the people who appear to be here with us tonight, and I say appear because underneath that reality, there is that truth spoken by Ramana Maharshi. There are no others, but they certainly do appear to be so. They appear to be so to me, and I'm sure they appear to be so to you. Each one of us, in seed form, somehow, as soon as existence began, these individuated aspects began. They, in the beginning, there was no form. There was only plasma. Plasma is vibration at an extremely high rate, which we call heat. There is no thing in it. It is simply vibration at a very, very, an unimaginably high rate. This is what the astrophysicists say. As it cooled, it became thingness. It became akasha out of the prana. This is when Einstein expressed mc squared, that is the state of plasma, when it's just pure energy. So matter condensed out of prana, out of energy. Everything that has occurred to this individuated, it was not yet in the sense that we would understand it, a being, but this seed, as Swami Vivekananda put it, everything that has occurred to this seed, every action that was in its presence left one of these impressions. As it evolved, that is, it was involved in this seed form. As it evolved into ever more complex through this process of anti-entropy. As it became more complex and more specialized, it took on more and more experiences. Now, there was nothing there at that point, according to the way this is formulated in the Vedas and the Upanishads, and for that matter in Sankhya. There was nothing there to record these in the sense of knowing them. This came after Mahat, the great cause, as buddhi, knowing one thing from another, and then the awareness in the cosmic mind of it is I who can tell one thing from another. Now we begin to get this sense of recognizing name and form. But all those past impressions are still there from the very dawn of creation, if you want to speak of it in those terms. And so we are now sitting here this evening, each of us as the sum total of everything that has happened to the seed that became what is sitting here tonight over those eons of time. According to the astrophysicists, 13.7 billion years. That roughly equates to the Vedic formulation as well. Now, we aren't very far into this process. According to the astrophysicists who discovered the value of the Higgs boson, it looks like the Higgs boson will yield a universe that evolves, that is, becomes more complex, that the anti-entropic force will persist over about 55 billion years or thereabouts. And then it will become the entropic, or the decomposition, as Swami Vivekananda called it. The decomposition force will predominate, and the universe will expand more and more, faster and faster, until everything is too far apart to relate to one another again. And so it goes back to its state of equilibrium, or no vibration, or absolute zero. But the information from which to create a new universe continues to exist. This is what Stephen Hawking was working on when he left the body. So yes, it's the sum total of everything without exception that has happened to the seed that is sitting there as Swayam Prabha tonight since existence, as we can think about it, began. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, hi, Sumesh here.
Yes, Sumesh.
So here it says, those that are very spiritual when they die. What does it mean here, like when we say spiritual? Because if you talk to anybody, 5 out of 10 people will say they are spiritual. So what exactly does it mean here when you say?
It means those who are no longer attracted to the things of the world. The very spiritual person, according to Swami Vivekananda, is that person who has renounced, and by that I don't mean pushed away. They have released all of their attachments and entanglements. They are the ones who then take the solar path.
Would it be same as the realized people? or that is?
They may not be fully realized at that point. The realized people, certainly, yes, that's true. But you need not be fully realized. You may, if you achieve Savikalpa Samadhi,
Mhm.
if you, and that this is something that is as Patanjali is very at pains to point out, the first 6 steps of his yoga are Purushakara, self-effort. They result in what in other terms is called Savikalpa Samadhi. He just simply calls it Samadhi. There are 2 kinds of Samadhi. The lower Samadhi, he says, once you abide in that lower Samadhi for some time, then you may or may not, while still embodied, go into that state which is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is full realization, full self-realization. But the Swami is saying that if you are very spiritual, that is to say, if you have achieved this Savikalpa state,
Mhm.
which you cannot do unless your heart is pure, as Christ put it. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Purity of heart means no longer any attraction to the world of mammon, the world of things and experience. You continue to exist in it because of your prarabdha karma, you're embodied. But it no longer has any meaning, real meaning or attraction to you. So those are the very spiritual people that he's speaking of. Those who no longer have any. So they then become perfected, as he says, in these 3 spheres that are a fine expression, a finer expression of materiality, of energy, and we could say, in a sense, it's a quantum phenomenon.
Mhm.
So does all that make sense? Or of course it doesn't totally make sense, because none of this really makes sense in the most left brain way.
Yeah.
It doesn't defy reason, but it isn't reasonable.
But it, I don't have the question anymore. At least I can say that.
All right, very good. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anything
And
else?
yeah, along those lines, I've heard it said, and I believe it's true, that attraction is not a choice. It's something that we feel. We don't have control over it. And those of us who are still attracted, or still feel attraction to mammon, as you said, the solution to that is to pray for detachment to God in whatever form is our Ishta.
Yes, as long as these 5 koshas exist, they each have their attraction to an aspect of the reflection. No 2 ways about it. The most gross is the food body. I want this to eat. I want to experience that. And then there's the energy body. And the energy body says, I want to be this way. I want to do hatha yoga. So I will be, my energy will be under control, and I will be graceful and pure in that sense. And then the mind body and all its incredible vicissitudes and what it's attracted to. And then the intellect. Even the intellect has its entanglements, and it has its exit door, which is going even further within to the Anandamaya kosha. But notice it all says Maya. All of the koshas are a form of Maya, Akasha and Prana. So yes, the attraction is involuntary. This is why we do our spiritual practices, to learn to dive deeper, dive deeper, dive deeper, concentrate more one-pointedly for longer, and finally we achieve that state where we're no longer really attached to anything of the so-called material world. We experience it, we're part of it, we do our duties, blah, blah, blah. But then we are pure in heart. The reflection is pure, and we achieve savikalpa samadhi, which is the highest form of reflection.
Right. I imagine once you achieve a samadhi, all those worldly attractions would just fall away.
Well, they simply are in their place. You know, one sees them as something of embodiment. They are what they are. And they come with these koshas. They come with the embodiment. And so, but you're no longer, as the little poem says, when you're truly tired of this, when you just say, you know, I really just don't want to be part of this anymore.
And we sign off and head for home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, yes, please, dear. Swayam, yes.
Yes, yes. I'm going to try and phrase this question in a way that I hope it makes some sense. So, at the end of a cycle, everything except, I guess, that which is liberated goes into this dormant seed form, and all the information is contained in there. And when the next cycle of creation begins, that same information is used to create. So there are like so many individual portions in that seed. For example, like if I don't get liberated and I go in seed form as Swayam, and then if I have to come back again, it won't be as Swayam, I suppose. It would be something else. And
Absolutely, yes.
and what
Swayam is a garment you're wearing.
right. So who decides which of the sanskaras goes with that new body?
It isn't a decision, dear. And furthermore, there's no reason to think that you won't achieve liberation in this cycle. There's no reason to think that you won't achieve liberation in this lifetime. There's every reason, because you're sitting here this evening, there's every reason to think that you will achieve liberation in this lifetime. And do your best not to doubt it. You have taken the Master's mantra. Holy Mother says over and over and over, those who have taken refuge in the Master have nothing whatsoever to worry about. And so all of these left mind concerns and categorizations of this information and that way of being and this and that, they're just diversions away from holding yourself to that faith. It's not that you must do anything. There is no must. It's just that there is an invitation to not doubt and to truly take refuge. Sri Ramakrishna said, I am the refuge. The refuge of what? Of whom? Those who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Does that mean you don't have any fame? Does it mean you don't have any fortune? Does it mean you don't have any friends? No, it simply means that you are not dependent in any way on them. You may have all the fame in the world, but it will be, more than anything else, an annoyance to you, as it was to Dr. Richard Feynman, the winner of the Nobel Prize for Physics.
Right. And Swami Vivekananda was famous in his time too. And look at how people lambasted him and slandered him. I'm sure that was an annoyance to him.
No, that wasn't so. That was kind of laughable to him. But if you read his letters, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't like it sometimes. But it really wasn't an issue for him. The things of the world arise and pass away. If we attach ourselves to them, if we say, I need this, I want this, I must have this, then we've simply glued our feet to the floor. And so we have to unlace those shoes, get out of those shoes. It isn't our feet that are glued to the floor. To use the metaphor, the soul is what is wearing the shoes. So you unlace those shoes and say, no, I don't want to be glued to the floor. I don't want to be on the hamster wheel.
Brahmadas's comment brought to my mind that whenever Sri Ramakrishna was upset about something somebody said or doubted, he would go straight to the mother.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
When he was very simple. People would tell him things, and he didn't reason about it. He just thought, this is the voice of the divine speaking to me. But then he'd get upset about it, so that he'd run to the highest form of the divine that he knew. And he might even come back and climb on their shoulders and give them a bump on the head. You rascal, you misled me. He did that.
And I think our takeaway from that is when we find something that upsets us, we can bring it up to the Lord, just as he did.
Exactly. Exactly. As a matter of fact, that is the invitation. And if we do, then we find that we receive. Ask and ye shall receive. I mean, Christ could not have made it plainer. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears, it's after 8:30. Om asato ma satgamaya. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Mrityor ma amritangamaya. Abir moiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Notice that that is a prayer. That is a prayer. It is a very profound, and if you let it reside within you and say it to yourself. It is a most searching and penetrating prayer. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya. Abir, Abir, Moiti. Say it with tears in your eyes. Say it with tears in your eyes. The promise is that you will receive what you're asking for. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Father and Mother. Any final thought from anyone? Notice how few we are here. Notice how few. As Sri Krishna says, not many are really willing to direct their attention this way. Is it because the other people are bad and wrong? No, 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 no. We have been there. It's just by the grace of the divine within us, this yearning to be free is becoming greater than our yearning to be entangled. We're getting weary of being, creating, doing, and sharing. We sense that within us, within this creation, there is more than what we are living today. And so we're willing to spend our time this way and then make the effort to compare what the Swami is telling us and what we discuss here. So important that we discuss these things among ourselves. We compare those with the way we're thinking and therefore speaking and behaving now. And let the power of what we've discovered lift us up and change the way we think and therefore speak and act. So, dear ones, until Saturday when we'll read and discuss Swami Prabhavananda's How to Know God, and then on Sunday when we'll have a little fun discussing the wonder of your Stardust spacesuit. What is this tool that you've been given to experience this and then to free yourself from it? It is really quite an amazing thing, this Stardust spacesuit. Any final thought from anyone? All right. The garment that we wear, the Stardust spacesuit. Until next time, good night and every best wish.
Good night.
Good night.